Monstrorum Historia by Gerritsen for History 2G-R3. Instructor Michael Egan. The 16th and 17th centuries saw the revolution of thought, of what was unexplainable or part of God's creation, to that of explainable and part of the natural world. Prior to this era, known as the Scientific Revolution, monsters were considered mysterious, supernatural beings to be feared. With a scientific lens turned on these phenomena, the work of natural philosophers of the time was to rationalize them as unusual natural wonders. The slidecast examines the documentary and artistic evidence developed by Ulysses Aldrovandi and published in Monstrorum Historia to transform societal views of the day. Who was Ulysses Aldrovandi? He was an Italian naturalist who was born in Bologna, Italy, and lived from 1522 to 1605. His interests included the study of philosophy and logic combined with medicine, and in 1553 he obtained a degree in philosophy and medicine from the University of Bologna. His interests extended to that of botany, zoology, and geology, and in 1561 he became the first professor of natural sciences at the University of Bologna. While over his lifetime Aldrovandi organized expeditions to collect samples of plants, animals, rocks, and other curiosities, which he meticulously documented, as well as corresponding with naturalists all over Europe, he published little of his vast collection of over 7,000 specimens during his lifetime. But after his death, donated thousands of objects to the Senate of Bologna to share his work with the public, and 8 volumes of his work were published in the 50 years following his death, including Monstrorum Historia, published in 1642 and edited by Bartolomeo Ambrosini. This publication details nature's strange and rare phenomenon that enables the reader to see it through the eyes of a 17th century naturalist. With the advent of the scientific revolution, 16th and 17th century naturalists strived to list, categorize, and standardize everything in the natural world. Monstrorum Historia is an incredible example of this movement. This publication is organized into chapters that are further arranged into subsections that categorize the natural specimens discussed. References and definitions appear throughout the publication in the margins, and the specimen drawings are all titled. The format to me is very familiar. What comes to mind immediately is that of an encyclopedia. I can't help but think it an early inspiration to publishers of modern-day encyclopedias. For example, Britannica. With regards to subject matter, Monstrorum Historia focuses not only on natural specimens that are considered normal, for example, a cat, a horse, or a fish. This document focuses on those that are unusual and rare in nature, that once would be considered monsters to be feared. Through the process of verifying and categorizing these natural and strange phenomenon, the term monster takes on a different connotation. Prior to the scientific revolution, monsters were mysterious, magical, supernatural beings whose existence defied rational explanation. The study and documenting of these natural wonders lifted the veil of mystery and attempted to logically explain the deformities based on the science of the day. In reviewing the artistic representation of specimens documented in Monstrorum Historia, they are not portrayed as freakish, grotesque, or frightening. They are not based in the supernatural, but the natural. The images depict known creatures that exist in nature but are somehow deformed and outside of recognized norms. What I notice most is that they are not ugly, but strangely beautiful and magical in a way that elicits wonder. The volume incites curiosity in a non-threatening way through the beauty of the imagery. While Aldrovandi claimed to only document those things that he had personally seen, handled, and dissected, it is clear from modern-day perspective that some of the monsters are of a mythological nature or based on historical documents, such as Egyptian hieroglyphics, whereas others do have some basis in the natural world, but the artistic images portray them likely from second-hand verbal or written accounts from his contemporaries. For example, this depiction and documentation of the lion and deer is labeled as a chimera. A chimera is a single organism made up of 2 sets of DNA. Aldrovandi explained these natural aberrations as ways in which the fetus may have been affected during pregnancy or childbirth. Whereas this depiction of a man's head on the body of a bird, with the posture and front legs of likely a cat, is drawn from historical Egyptian hieroglyphic evidence and is documented by Aldrovandi as fact. The third image of a seahorse is clearly drawn from nature, as these are true inhabitants of the sea. However, the artistic image was likely drawn from second-hand knowledge, as it is a very literal representation of a seahorse. Monstrum Historia is a fascinating publication and example of the dawning of a new age. The shift in societal attitudes of simply accepting that which was unexplainable or frightening, such as monsters, as being part of God's creation and therefore not to be questioned, became a thirst for knowledge. A desire to understand and explain the mysteries in the natural world led to publications such as this. Monsters weren't necessarily something to be frightened of, but may have been created by an explainable, man-made force outside of God's hands. Essentially, monster as other. Thank you for your attention. Sources: Monstrum Historia by Ulysses Aldrovandi. Aldrovandi's Monsters by Nisa McGarrigle. And Ulysses Aldrovandi from Wikipedia.